Good morning, everyone. My name is Akshar Patel. I'm the Director of Alumni Engagement and Giving Programs at IIT. Today, we have with us a panel of Illinois Tech alumni who are going to talk about a graduate degree and what it means to get a graduate degree and some of the benefits for going to grad school. We're going to have each of the presenters introduce themselves. They're going to talk a little bit about their grad school experience, first starting really with how an undergraduate degree can be a foundation for grad school. They're going to talk a little bit about some of the transition from undergrad to grad programs, the type of degrees that they have, and then just some advice about some tips and tricks, things that they might do differently if they were to go back to graduate school. Following up with our alumni speakers, we're then going to have a presentation, just a short presentation from the IIT Graduate Admissions Office, again, talking a little bit about some of the programs that we have and a little bit about the programs at IIT and what it's like to apply to graduate school and any sort of tips and tricks there. And then towards the end of our time together, we will do a Q&A session. If people have questions, please feel free to type them in the chat window. You will see on your screens on the right-hand side, there should be a toolbar, and one of them has a small chat icon that you can click on and type your questions there, and then I will read them to our panelists and have them answer them. So why don't we get started with the introductions? So let's start with, we'll go Ed, John, and then Arun for introductions. If we'll take it away, Ed.
Okay, I'm Ed Smith. I've got a chem engineering degree that was acquired in 1967. Currently living just outside of Cleveland, Ohio, but I've worked and lived globally. Did you want us to go through our total introduction or just say hello?
The full introduction is okay.
Okay. My undergraduate, I actually wanted to be a veterinarian, and I just happened to skip math class one day in high school and ended up getting a scholarship to IIT as long as I became a chem engineer. Fortunately, it aligned with everything that I had a personal interest in, and I enjoyed the education. I wasn't the most spectacular academic performer, and for those that were on earlier, they heard that I actually flunked economics because I didn't see why economics was necessary for engineering at all. And that's one of the things that was an eye-opener after I got out, that I started working for a company called Unical, or Union Oil Company of California, designing and building pipelines, but I found out very quickly that there was no need to design or build if there wasn't an economic driver for it. So I took a greater interest in commercial aspects of the oil industry and waited about 3 years. I think it was 1970, I decided to go back for my MBA to expand my commercial knowledge, my awareness of what was happening in finance. So I did that. I attended night school at Northwestern University. It was a good program. I got an MBA majoring in the areas of quantitative methods and finance. But I think the best part of that was that I was getting it while I was working during the day, so I could see the application of all the courses that I was taking. And it made me certainly appreciate the value of that knowledge, but it also made me question some of my instructors at the time. Being on my own, funding the courses on my own with potential support from Unical, and spending my time at night rather than home with my young family, I was not afraid to say, hey, you're only teaching us what's in the book. Why don't you go beyond that and add value? Because we can read the book anytime. So it was a good experience. Unfortunately, I was interrupted by construction projects and labor strikes, and it took me 5 years to get through, but I did. Another thing that I learned is sometimes if you get your degree while you're working for a company, that many people in that company won't recognize that you've gained value through an additional degree because they'll still see you as the engineer that they hired 4 or 5 years ago. And that just impedes your progress through the company. In my particular case and other cases I've seen, I think it helps to take a step back and either find a way to change what division you're working in within that company, or actually leave the company and go somewhere else where you're a fresh face, you've got a fresh resume, and you get fresh opportunity. I did that. I left Unical and went to work for BP in Cleveland, all the time getting plenty of opportunities. I'd left Unical at a very young age of around 32, or as president of their pipeline division. When I went into BP, it just continued to grow to the point where I was eventually responsible for the Trans-Alaska Pipeline in Alaska right after the Exxon Valdez incident. And then I was eventually hired away to start running international projects, which I did in the former Soviet Union, Central Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, which were all learning experiences in terms of learning other cultures and other economies, learning how to deal with authoritarian figures who were not afraid to actually kill their opponents. It was an entirely different world out there and very eye-opening. Along the line, I did start law school. I did not complete due to the pressures of travel and work, but it gave me an tremendous insight into the value of law. So I think my whole involvement in industry has gone from the technical side to commercial and finance, and then on to legal, and then on to politics, because you find out that yes, the economics might be there to justify the design and construction of a project, but if the politics aren't there to allow the finances to work, it's not going to happen. Also, sometimes you'll find out in places like Russia, Afghanistan, where I lived for a couple of years, that even if the commercial drive isn't there, often the political drive is there, and that can push projects forward or efforts forward, whether there's a commercial justification or not. So there was a lot to be learned, and going forward, what would I have liked to have done differently? I would have liked to have known a lot more about the world when I started out. I've come to see The Economist as my Bible and read it almost cover to cover every week that it comes out and try to understand what's going on. I've opened up my mind to different cultures. We've lived in many countries around the world and seen not only the effects of different economic systems, but different political systems, different religious systems, and how they can impact what we do. So I think a great awareness of those is incredibly important. Also, I think that you need to expand your education as soon as you can in things that are non-academic. I was talking to a young nephew once and said, before you get your driver's license, you have to take driver's ed. Well, how about before you take a student loan or a loan on a house, you have to get financial ed? Or before you start having sex and having a family, why don't you get family ed? And these are things that I wish I would have had years ago, that foundation that it takes to get through life, in addition to the academic education that you get for engineering, for finance, for business, and for global politics. So I've enjoyed everything I've done. I think I've been incredibly lucky. A point I like to make, though, is that you make your own luck. It's like winning the lottery. You're never going to win the lottery if you don't buy a ticket, and you're never going to be lucky if you don't take chances. So thanks for listening.
Thank you, Ed. John?
Hello. My name is John Karen. I obviously an IIT grad. I have a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering. I ultimately went to work for a defense contractor out of school. While I was in school at IIT for my undergrad, I had a roommate that suggested I pursue a digital option, which turned out to be a precursor to computer engineering. So we were building CPUs and digital circuit boards, and the combination of IIT's base engineering program, which exposed me to a whole variety of aspects of the engineering discipline, along with this what would become computer engineering, well positioned me for a career as an engineer. So I went to work for a defense contractor, and when I got there, I found out that I was, with my IIT education, better prepared than many of my new incoming peers. So I was very appreciative of that. But while I was at IIT, I too took an engineering economics class and found it to be quite enlightening. I enjoyed it. and recognized that I wanted to go for a master's degree, and I just didn't know exactly what to pursue. The place I worked was run by the group I was in was run by people with PhDs in math, and they promoted master's degrees in engineering, computer science, and mathematics, and I wasn't interested. I kept looking at what am I doing now, and I was using less than 20% of what I learned in school. And I thought about all the brain damage I incurred in the 400 level classes, and thought, do I want to be more narrow, or would I be better off having a broader skill set? So I ultimately convinced them to send me to IIT for an MBA, and they didn't want to send people to business school. But at the time, IIT had a program in research and engineering management, and I went and talked to them, and they agreed to send me to through that program. And it was a very enlightening program, because my undergrad was engineering. I essentially had to earn a business undergrad. I think I had to take 20 classes to get the MBA. But it exposed me to many things that I hadn't been exposed to in my career, and from an engineering perspective. So that was very good. Halfway through my MBA program, my employer said peace broke out around the world, and we're not going to pay for this anymore. We need to cut some expenses. So, having been exposed to the markets through the MBA program, I decided to go to work for the stock exchange, and I went to work for the Chicago Stock Exchange, and I started as a programmer working on their real-time trading systems. I was still in school. I really didn't move up much. I was pretty much in a stagnant role until I finished the MBA, and I just started moving up within the organization, and I went from programmer to the CEO of the company over a 30-year career. So I initially took on the application development group, and I ran that for a while. I became their CIO and ran all of technology. In the early 2000s, they recognized that the entire operation centered around technology, and rather than have two people, they just made me their COO and CIO. Did that for many years, and then went on to become their president to address some cross-departmental issues. And for the last 4.5, I was the CEO of the company. The broad skill set, because almost every business centers around technology, or has a core part of it. It has a tech component, coupled with the MBA, was a very powerful and a versatile combination. And pretty much anything that came along, whether I was an expert or not, I had enough information to do further research and train myself and teach myself. So that was very helpful. The other thing I would recommend is to kind of get out of your normal comfort zone. If you're an engineer, especially, I was talked into running for office in my local municipality, something that most engineers would never do. But I did it. It wasn't comfortable, but it was good for me. It was media training, self-promotion. It was my way of giving back to the community. But what it really did for me is it taught me how to function at a board level. You don't really kind of learn how to apply C-level techniques when you're a programmer or a middle manager. This put me in as the equivalent of a board member for a small corporation. It was like a $60 million city. We were an alderman. I was an alderman, and it taught you your role and responsibility for policy and direction and oversight, such that when I interacted with our exchange board, I knew how they thought, and it was when they asked a question, I knew how to answer that question, and those skills proved to be almost as valuable as what I acquired in business school. So there's a lot of different things that add up to kind of complement your skill set and help you advance and function at a high level in pretty much any organization. So I'm happy I went for the MBA. I'm happy I pursued the digital option before that. It's a great combination, and I would highly recommend anybody looking to pursue an MBA to consider it. And for me, I wanted to go broader rather than narrower. And as you move up in the organization, that broad skill set is invaluable. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And then Arun, we'll kind of have you introduce yourself and your background, please.
Great, thank you for having me. My name is Arun Prakash. I'm a IIT alum from 1999 in aerospace engineering. So I was very much of the mind of when I came into IIT that I would pursue a master's at least in engineering. I was both my parents had graduate degrees, and my brother was at the time in the process of starting his MBA. And so I knew that I was going to pursue a graduate degree. In fact, I came into IIT with the part of the Cameras program, which provided that additional year of tuition for that graduate degree. While I was at IIT, I realized that I wanted to go to a different school for my master's for a few reasons, to change up the atmosphere, but also the aerospace master's program at IIT wasn't as highly regarded at that time as it may be today. So I applied and also took all the various exams and got a fellowship to go to Stanford for my master's in engineering and in aerospace. And so that was something that I knew I wanted to go to one of the top schools in aerospace programs in the country, and I set my sights on getting into several of them to have a choice, and so I did do that. I also it was also confirmed that it was a good choice to go to get a master's because during my undergrad years I did summer internships in research and also with what was going to be Boeing satellite systems. It was called Hughes at the time, and in both research experiences I had and with the work at Boeing in the advanced control systems division that I worked on, a lot of the people that I interacted with that were regarded as the strongest technically had masters and PhDs. And so when you're in a deep science environment, then those with graduate degrees are usually more highly regarded, and that was definitely the case in my experience. And so I ended up going back to Boeing after Stanford to work with them, and as with the master's degree, I had a standing that was more respected than those who didn't, but I was also able to handle more difficult and complex work in what we were doing. We were building control systems and software for very advanced satellites, some of them government satellites, and some of them commercial ones that you may use every day. So that for me was good, and I got a lot of great mentorship from the technical fellows at Boeing. I did pursue a second graduate degree later on. While I was at Boeing, I was exposed to a lot of the business side and the program management, and I decided that I wanted to get an MBA. By this time, I had worked about 4 years at Boeing. I was having already had a master's degree. It wasn't something that I said for sure I have to get it, but I explored a few other options of getting into maybe an aerospace startup or getting into some space policy programs. There were some the White House was doing at the time, and I was looking into those. So I remember looking into 3 different options to kind of change up my career, and I decided that if I were to get an MBA, that would be my first choice, but it would have to be at one of the top schools in the country. And so this time I applied, same as I did for my master's, I applied to the top schools. At that time I got into all of them. This time I only got into one, but it only mattered to get into one. So I went there, and that was MIT Sloan, which turned out to be a great fit for me. And so I wanted to learn about business in the context of what else was out there in the world and what were, having a diverse student body around me. A lot of people at Boeing were getting their fully employed MBAs at UCLA. I was in Los Angeles at the time, so UCLA was very popular, as was USC. And it was an option to work while getting your MBA, much like Ed did, and it was paid for by the company. And I decided at that time that, and a lot of this was influenced by people I knew, like my older brother, who did a full-time MBA, was if you're doing the full-time MBA, you're able to detach from your current day-to-day work, and you're able to fully take advantage of all the opportunities outside of the classroom, which are networking with your classmates and being involved in a lot more activities, traveling and seeing how business works across the world. And I was able to take advantage of all of that. And that was very important for me. And so that became a really great stepping stone for me. I also was thinking of changing careers. And so while I had a chance to go back to Boeing and not only become a manager there, but also get all my tuition paid for if I went back, I decided to take a bet and not take that opportunity and go into a new direction. And so I joined an investment firm, a private equity firm, right out of business school, and something that I had not done before. In fact, there was an alumni Hawk Talk on going from engineering to investing, which I participated in, which is available if you want to learn more about that. But basically, I had to learn a lot, and I was very valuable to just have some not only the basic business skills, but strong analytical skills, as well as just having been more of a networker and team player during my business school. I was able to do a little bit better than I may have done otherwise. So I got a lot of value out of my 2 graduate degrees. It's been very transformational for my career. And so I don't think I would do anything different. Career-wise, I may have transitioned out of private equity sooner than I would have liked. I liked it, but I was I was there for about 10 years, and it started to kind of get a little stale for me at the end. And so what I did was I left and joined a startup accelerator here in Austin, where I live, and became a mentor to startups. And through that, I met other mentors and other startups, and joined one of the fellow mentors as he was launching a startup called Cerebri AI, which is in the AI artificial intelligence software space. And I'm there now as the CFO, and have been here 2 years, and I'm one of the main leaders here. And it's been very, very interesting and exciting for me in this role. One thing I'll say is that today in this company, we're hiring it's another science-based company, just like we were at Boeing. We were considered the science guys and men and women in the company. And so here we're a very science-based company, and we're hiring people who are at least in the roles that are interacting with customers and the product, to have graduate degrees is very important. Not all of them have it, of course, but it's seen as a very important piece to gain standing as someone who's going to be given and charged with a lot of responsibility. And so we have out of our staff, about 50 people, about 20% are PhDs. 2/3 have master's degrees at minimum. And so it's a very important thing for us. And I'm seeing that a lot more with a graduate degree. You're basically doing 2 things. You're signaling to others that you go above and beyond the basic requirements, and you're able to go and work hard for something that is not something that everybody does. And you're also going through a lot more rigor. And rigor in a master's or a PhD program is much higher than an undergraduate program. And that rigor is required when you're in a company like mine that is not everything is defined. We're very early stage. We've only been around for 2 years. We're a startup. And so while larger companies may have processes and technologies already in place, we're building everything from scratch. And so rigor is very important, and rigor of thought and rigor of work, and in all aspects. And so that's kind of what I would say is some of my additional thoughts.
Thanks, Arun. So before we go to the Q&A session, I've already gotten a couple questions here, and others feel free to chat them either to the whole group or privately to me. We're gonna switch gears for a second and introduce Nate to our chat here. Nate Robbins works in the graduate admissions office at Illinois Tech. He is. I'm going to share your slides in a second, Nate. So for Arun and John, if you guys want to get off the screen for a second, feel free. But Nate's going to talk a little bit about what it's like to get a graduate degree at Illinois Tech and some of the tips and tricks he has for that. So let me get your slides up here, and then I'll give it over to you, Nate. There we go.
So most of our graduate programs, excuse me, most of our graduate programs obviously fall into the same categories that our undergraduate programs do. So obviously we're still looking at, our Armour College of Engineering, the College of Science, the School of Applied Technology, as well as our business school. We do also have, of course, a law school and a School of Architecture. Unfortunately, our office doesn't really work with those. So if you are interested in a law degree or a degree in architecture, I won't cover those as much, mostly going to focus on the application process and the degree types and those sorts of things for engineering, sciences, applied tech, and business. Now, these are still going to be very interdisciplinary degrees. A lot of them, particularly at the master's level, do offer lots of hands-on experience. And it is still a very experiential, sort of driven education. You will see that a lot at the undergraduate level as well, thinking of like an iPro that you would have completed during your last couple of semesters here. That type of education is at the graduate level. There is a greater focus on research, of course. At the graduate level, as was already mentioned, there is a lot more rigor that's involved. The expectations are just different than they are at the undergraduate level. Graduate students are expected to, in many respects, help sort of expand those fields, expand those disciplines, and kind of push the boundaries of knowledge in those fields, particularly at the PhD level. Now, we do, of course, with that research and with that hands-on focus, we do try to find research and promote projects that have a really practical application. So a lot of our research projects are not theory driven. They are more applied types of research. And something that I like to tell prospective graduate students, kind of explaining how graduate school is a little bit different than undergraduate, is think about all the really cool research projects that you wanted to participate in and do when you were in your bachelor's degree. That's the kind of stuff that you get to do at the graduate level. All of those great projects and all that lab time and everything you kind of probably hungered for at the undergraduate level, those are the types of things that you'll mostly be focusing on at the graduate level. Actually, can I switch slides, or do you need to do that for me? Thank you, sir. So here's kind of an outline of the different types of degrees that we do offer. So starting with the most rigorous is the PhD. This is typically 4 to 6 years beyond your bachelor's degree. If you already have a master's degree, it can shorten that PhD. But if you're coming straight from the bachelor's, which most of our programs do allow you to do, it's typically going to be anywhere from 4 to 6 years of study. The first 2 years of that PhD are going to be coursework. They are typically master's level courses. You will be taking those classes with other master's candidates and with other new PhD candidates. After those, first 2 years or so, oftentimes you'll take your qualifying exams, and then you'll progress on to the dissertation portion of your PhD, which is really strictly research and writing. It is very self-driven. It takes a lot of discipline to get through that dissertation portion, and oftentimes that's where students kind of get stuck. And you hear a lot of people that have started a doctoral program but have not completed it. This is the phase where they get kind of stuck, is that dissertation. So having you'll have a research advisor, of course, but having a good relationship with that research advisor and having a good relationship with your faculty and seriously the community within your department is a great way to sort of work through that tough period in your dissertation. The PhD, of course, is typically the degree that's required if you want to teach at the university level, if you want to continue working in sort of an academic setting, the PhD is really sort of the standard that's set for that. Or if you're in a very research-driven profession, if you want to conduct research professionally at a very high level, the PhD is great for that as well. The next one in terms of rigor that would be available would be the Master of Science. So these are much shorter programs. These are usually 2 years long, but they do still include a thesis. The Master of Science is kind of a halfway program between a professional master's degree, like a Master of Engineering, and the PhD. The Master of Science has the length of any other master's degree, so that 2 years typically. And it is mostly coursework driven, but you do also have the opportunity to conduct research. And the Master of Science is really an excellent stepping stone toward the PhD. So if you plan later on to pursue a PhD, even if you think you may several years down the road, Master of Science is a great preparation for that. It does require a thesis most times, and that thesis is excellent preparation and oftentimes serves as a literal starting point for a lot of PhD dissertations. Again, it's great if you want to go on to a PhD, but it's also good if you are interested again in that research sort of driven profession. Perhaps not as high level research as a PhD would allow you to conduct, but certainly a great way to either get a foothold in that type of industry or to continue to advance in that industry is with a Master of Science degree. Again, in terms of rigor, the professional master's is a little bit of a step down, certainly not because of the coursework. The coursework is exactly the same that you would find in the Master of Science degree, and typically in the first 2 years of the PhD. So the coursework is exactly the same in our professional master's degrees as you would find in other graduate degrees. The difference really comes in the thesis requirement. So for the professional master's degrees, I'm talking about a Master of Engineering, Master of Data Science, a Master of Analytical Chemistry, anything that really isn't labeled Master of Science. The only difference is that thesis requirement. So there really is no research that is part of the professional master's degree. It really is an opportunity for students to come in and just take coursework. You will continue to take courses similar like you would at your undergraduate program, just a little bit more in depth. That offers a chance for sort of that deeper understanding of the material than you would find in an undergraduate program. Most of the professional master's programs can be completed entirely online. So, if you are a working professional, if you don't quite have the time to completely step away from that job, we do offer a lot of online options for professional master's programs. And there's also a lot of full-time time flexibility. Full-time at the graduate level is considered 3 classes per semester. Sounds a lot different than it when you're undergraduate, but trust me, you will be busy with those 3 classes per semester. Part-time is considered anything less than 3 courses per semester. So if you are only taking 1 or 2 classes, that is considered part-time study. Most of our programs don't have a deadline for completion. So even if it takes you 3 or 4 years at a part-time basis to complete that master's degree, that's okay. Akshar, next slide, please. Thank you. So I did mention that a lot of our programs are very research driven, and that it is a very sort of applicable, hands-on type of research. And it really is, the hallmark of our institutional culture, both at the undergraduate and the graduate level. So this slide, you can read down here at the bottom, it's kind of our research mission statement for the university. But down at the bottom, there is a list of our on-campus research institutes that we actually allow students, both at the graduate level and high-achieving undergraduate students, can partake in research projects within these research institutes. So I said all of these are on campus, but we do also have some research institutes off campus. And of course, some partners with national labs in the Chicagoland area. Those are located off campus as well. Next slide, please. Thank you. So you may be thinking, I already have a job. I'm making pretty good money. I have that engineering degree already. Why do I need to go back and get this? As several of our speakers have already mentioned, it is that opportunity to sort of expand your view of the job that you were doing. Maybe taking some of those economics courses allows you to kind of better understand the role that your job is playing sort of in the wider economy, whether of your local area or of a particular sector of the economy. If you're kind of waffling on whether or not to go back to grad school, here's some numbers to consider for you. We are #1 on return on investment for all Illinois colleges, public and private, for both the graduate and the undergraduate level. So congratulations. If you're an alum, you're already getting a really good return on your investment. But as a graduate alum, that would continue for you. And that is specifically applicable to our master's degrees as well. So excluding the MBA, we are also #1 for return on investment for all master's programs in the state of Illinois. And that again includes both public and private institutions. So, you can compare us to Northwestern or UChicago or in UIUC or UIC. Our master's programs are #1 for ROI compared to all of those. We're actually #30 in the country for return on investment compared to all graduate programs in the United States. And it actually ties us with MIT. So if you're considering MIT versus IIT, you've already been here, you know what that experience is going to be like, and that is a comparable return on investment there. Next slide, please. So beyond these sort of financial factors of return on investment, going to graduate school really has other advantages, other return offers that are not necessarily monetary. It's preparation for advancement. So for instance, many engineering disciplines that require professional licensures to be able to work as a consultant or what have you, the time that you spend in graduate school oftentimes is applicable toward that licensure requirement. So if you need, let's say, 5 years to be able to qualify to earn a license, the 2 or 3 years that you spend in graduate school can count towards that time requirement. And it's also, as someone else mentioned earlier, a great networking opportunity, not only for your faculty members, many of whom are industry professionals or were industry professionals that have come back to the academy, but also for fellow students, other students that are working professionals and are taking time to come back to get a master's degree. It's a really great networking opportunity with those fellow students as well. And of course, as we have mentioned a couple of times, it's a great opportunity to sort of acquire more in-depth knowledge, whether it's about your specific industry and your specific sector, or kind of broadening that. If you are more interested in business, if you have an engineering degree, but you're more interested in the business side of things, being aware of those economic trends, being more aware of professional trends, how are technology developments changing the way that you have traditionally done your job? How are new techniques going to impact how productive you can be, or how many people you have on your team, or all of those types of things. And of course, hopefully coming back to your employer, with sort of the latest and greatest in research, in technology, in those techniques. So it's bringing more back to your employer as well. So if you're interested in applying, if you've thought about it and you're kind of leaning towards applying, or if you're just interested in sort of knowing how that works, here's some information on that. So all applicants, you do have to start and complete an online application. So here's the website right here in this slide. So that is where you can find our online application. It's also where you can find a lot of the information as far as your document requirements, so your transcripts, your test scores, all of those sorts of things. The application deadline, the priority deadline, this is specifically for PhD candidates, is going to be January 31st. If you're applying for a master's degree, whether a Master of Science or one of those professional master's degrees, you have until August 1st, which is actually quite late. Many graduate programs, they do still have application deadlines set earlier in the spring. So August 1st gives you plenty of time if you are considering applying. If you need to, perhaps check with your HR department to check on remission or anything like that, August 1st gives you plenty of time to apply for that. And that is for the upcoming fall 2019 term, which starts in August of 2019, of course. You will still be considered automatically for any scholarships or assistantships or any sort of institutional university funding that can be provided. You're automatically considered for those. So there's no additional application or anything that you would need to submit for that. When we are reviewing and when your faculty members are reviewing your applications, they will automatically consider you for any funding that they may have available. So if you go to that website, if you're interested in, oh, actually, can we go back? Sorry. If you are interested in applying and you want to follow to that website, these are the types of documents that you will need in order to complete that online application. You'll need a copy of your transcript. Even though you graduated from IIT, the admissions office doesn't actually have access to your transcript. That is managed and maintained by a separate office. So you do need to provide us a copy of your transcript. An unofficial copy is completely fine. If you still have access to an unofficial copy of your transcript through your My IIT student portal, you can absolutely download that and attach it to your application. That's perfectly fine. You'll also need to provide a professional statement. This is typically 2 to 3 pages long, nothing terribly intense. 2 to 3 pages, kind of just outlining why you want to go to graduate school, what sort of benefits you see yourself gaining from returning to school, and importantly, why specifically here at IIT? What is it about our particular program in, say, aerospace engineering that is attracting you to come back? If you're leaning towards a research-oriented program, a Master of Science or a PhD, the professional statement is a great opportunity to mention specific faculty members and specific research projects that you're interested in participating on, or people that you're interested in working with. Your test scores. Now, we do require a GRE for our PhD and our Master of Science programs. You do have to submit a GRE for that. However, for the professional master's programs, all of those qualify for GRE waivers if you graduated with at least a 3.0 GPA. So if you have at least that B average when you graduated from your bachelor's program here at IIT, we can waive the GRE requirement for you. Letters of recommendation, these are optional, but of course I do recommend supplying them if you have access to people that can provide a solid recommendation for you. These can be professional or academic. Either one are perfectly acceptable. You can submit up to 3, but again, these are optional for all of our master's programs. For PhD, we do recommend submitting those 3 letters. There is also an application fee. However, this is waived automatically for all of our alumni. As soon as you indicate that you graduated from Illinois Tech in your online application, the application fee will be automatically waived for you. Next slide, please. Awesome. So once you're admitted, you will be automatically assigned a faculty member that you can work with for your research advising to help select courses and register for those courses. After that, let us know you're coming. Intent to enroll that you can fill out online. That's how you let us know that you're planning to attend. I would also recommend that you check with HR, check with your human resources department to see if there are any benefits to you returning to school. Perhaps they're offering tuition remission or some sort of scholarship that you may qualify for. If you're getting full coverage, whether through an institutional scholarship, an employer scholarship, or a combination of both, if you are not going to be paying a tuition bill, we can actually waive your tuition deposit as well, which is $300. That goes towards your first semester's tuition. But again, if you're getting a full tuition coverage and you won't be paying tuition, we can actually waive that for you. Final slide, please. Here is my contact information as well as contact information for the rest of my team. So if you have any questions, please feel free to get in touch with us. The departments and programs that we work with are parenthetical there next to our contact information. If you would like to come back to campus at some point, if you are interested in talking to some graduate faculty, or interested in hearing a little bit more about our research or what funding looks like at the graduate level, we do have an event on Friday, March 29th, where students come to campus from all over across the country. So it's a great, again, networking opportunity. It's a great space to meet some other people and to talk to faculty members and kind of get an idea of what that specific graduate program is going to look like for you. Registration for that opens in January, so if you're interested, you can check the website or you can email me and happy to send out a link for that once it opens up. And again, if you have any other questions, my contact information is there. Please feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call at any point.
Great, thanks, Nate. So I'm going to ask our panelists to get back on the screen here and unmute themselves so that we can see them. And we're going to start our question and answer session. I'm so excited because we have several questions that have come in from some people here. And the first question that we have, it's for John, and I think anyone can answer this, but we'll let John answer, and then the others, if you have input. The question is, did you put an emphasis on the working environment of the work opportunities presented to you in choosing your path forward? And if so, how important did you find the working environment as an influencer in deciding your path forward?
My path forward was based on interest. So can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, my path forward was based on interest. I went where there was an opportunity in a company that was doing something I wanted to learn more about. So that's the simple answer. The work environment was less of an issue. Obviously, I enjoyed working in the companies I worked in. Otherwise, I might not have stayed there. But it was really, what did I want to do?
Anyone else have I just put that question into the chat, so if anyone else wants to answer as well.
I think that the working environment certainly provides pressure and guidance on where you want to go. If you see an opportunity and you want to pursue it, you may be short of the resources or training to go after it, so you take it on yourself. One of the things that I had done in our company at a Unical was when our EE left and all the electrical engineering wasn't being done by anyone, I learned how to do power engineering and controls engineering. When our civil engineer left, I learned how to do the foundations for tanks, pumps, motors. And when I wanted to move up, I actually scoured the Wall Street Journal and found a job that my boss would really like and gave him the ad, and he left and created a position. So it's just like buying that lottery ticket. Take a chance. Make sure people get out of your way so you can move ahead. So yeah, I think your job environment does provide, whether you expect it or not, does provide a push or an opportunity for you to go back to school, learn more, and take advantage of opportunities.
Arun, anything you'd like to add?
No, those are great answers. I loved Ed's tactics. That's awesome. No, I'd say you're hopefully you're going to take a job that's going to be for a long tenure. I know the average tenure gets shorter as we go through time, but you're going to spend most of your week there, and you're going to be distracted from things like fun and family at that job. So the environment is critical, that you're being in a place where you like to be and are supported, and that's important. And there's not enough time in our lives to spend in a place where you're not feeling that.
Fantastic. The second question is, do you feel the most value from the degree comes from the school that is attended, the type of degree, or just the lessons and skills achieved from attaining that degree? So again, the question is to all the panelists, do you feel the most value from the degree comes from the school that's attended, the type of degree, or just the lessons and skills achieved from attaining that degree?
I'm going to jump in and say I think the greatest value comes from what you learned, but unfortunately, the name of the school is what helps you get the job. And it's going to sound a little sexist, but when you're starting to date, you tend to focus on the girl who might be the most attractive, but you prefer ending up with a girl that has the greatest personality and you most align with. So I think, yeah, the value comes from what you know, but getting that job, unfortunately, I think is linked to where you went to school. unless you're very good at writing resumes and generating colleagues and a network and everything else.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, unfortunately, all those things matter. They just matter at different stages. So, like Ed said, near term, it's the school you went to, but long term, it's what you learn and your skills you have and that you learn over time as well. So your ability to learn is critical, but it never hurts to have a great name to help get in the door, a contact that or an introduction that's warm versus just applying, online to get in the door. All these things matter, and so that's why it's important to focus on each of these. So if you don't have the circumstance where you can go to a top business school and do it full time, then don't worry about that, but focus on what you can control when you're at your part-time program at the school in your city, and you have a lot of work to do. Just take maximum advantage to the extent you can without, completely stressing yourself out, and network as much as you can, and recognize the disadvantages of what you're dealing with and work on mitigate those. That's what you do in anything in life, and so figure out where you stand and recognize the facts as they are, not as you want them to be.
And I concur, name and network creates opportunity, but your ability to move up is what you know, specifically how broad a knowledge base you have, because it's that broad knowledge base that enables you, as Ed was talking about, to retool yourself in a way that adds value in the company. So, and that assists you in kind of moving up the ranks. Thank you.
Fantastic. The next question, and I'll let Nate start with this kind of from the logistical or technical side with grad admissions. But the question is, how early should students start thinking about grad school before they actually apply?
Sure. So traditionally, I think students that are considering graduate school oftentimes kind of start that application process anywhere 6 to 9 months before they want to start school. So if you're interested in starting in August 2019, I think a lot of students are working on and completing applications December, January, maybe February of 2018 into 2019. Like I said earlier, our application deadline specifically for master's programs is very generous, especially compared to some of our neighbors in the Chicago area. So you can take a little bit more time if you need to do that, but most students somewhere between 6 to 9 months before they want to start.
Anyone else have anything to add to that, or maybe the question could be reframed and when people are weighing graduate school, what are your opinions on going directly from the undergraduate program or taking a few years to work and then coming back to school? If someone wants to comment on that.
I think you get a lot more value out of the education if you're actually out in the work environment for a while, because then you'll not only know what you don't know, but you'll be able to apply it as you're going along. If I had to do over again, I'd do exactly what I did: get out, work for a number of years, and then go back to school. I think you get a lot more value from it.
I worked for a while. Oh, go ahead. I would say I worked for a while before starting up grad school. Just think about all the people that have a degree but never ever use it. So I think it's important to get a sense, as Ed was saying, what do you want to do? What do you like? I will tell you that I learned to design digital circuits, but over the course of my career, I have never designed one digital circuit. I wound up doing mostly program. I spent my whole life in the software development space and playing the seam between business and technology. How do you apply this, regardless of whether it's with a defense contractor or a stock exchange, or I work as a consultant now, looking at business, where business and technology meet. So the you don't know what you're going to end up doing. The tools that you acquire in school enable you to evolve into the role that you're ultimately going to enjoy. And I think it's good to wait a little bit to get a feel for what it is you want to do. I mean, I know people with law degrees that have absolutely no interest in practicing law. So time works to your advantage.
And I get that question actually a lot from students that are just finishing a bachelor's degree. And I do recommend for those students to go to work for a couple of years. If they have the opportunity to go to work in their field for a short period of time, it absolutely can be beneficial. If something may sound great in the classroom, but in daily practice and actually going to work and all of that, it sucks. And you may find out that you don't want to pursue that career anymore. And going to graduate school can provide an opportunity to sort of shift into a different field. So, and who knows, you may even find an employer that will help you pay for graduate school if you decide to go back for it. So if you're uncertain, if that is a question in your mind, it never hurts to have some work experience, and it will not impact your application. That is not something that is frowned upon. Having some professional experience and taking a couple of years off to sort of go to work in the field, that is not an issue for an application.
Thank you, Nate. We'll do one more question. We have a few minutes left. And this question, again, is for everyone on the panel. And the question is, how do you balance the financial impact of going back to school with having a job or a family?
I never even thought about it. I just thought, hey, that's the thing to do. Let's just keep going. And my life has been one challenge and one adventure after another. And fortunately, the compensation has followed along with it. My spouse has been extremely supportive, as have my 3 children throughout the career. Our international travel and assignments and deployments didn't start until after the kids were gone, so that wasn't a problem. But it's been the personal reward, along with the compensation, a sufficient compensation to get by, has made it worthwhile. I mean, both my wife and I spent almost 2 years in Kabul, Afghanistan, working for the State Department, helping to provide advice through other advisors directly to the various ministries and ministers and their and the president. And that was rewarding to see the impact that you can have. The same thing happened when I was stationed in Juba, South Sudan, that you find that your knowledge can really change the direction of a country and make a tremendous difference to people. You get a return that's beyond compensation. Unfortunately, that country restarted its civil war, so we vacated. But it was a good experience.
Yeah, I would say, it's an investment in yourself. And so if you think about the money, it definitely has near-term impacts for anyone going to graduate school. But thinking long-term, the additional compensation you'll get will more than make up for that. And now it's a matter of, can you manage the short-term pains that may come? But are you betting in yourself to be able to work hard, succeed in getting the degree, and focus on utilizing it to the best abilities in the future, so that you can get those the rewards will be of personal achievement, and doing interesting things like Ed has done and everyone else has done is much more than the money that you could ever make. Even if you go and become a multimillionaire, it's still like personal achievement. I think for most people is just worth so much more. And so and that's what getting advancing yourself and learning is all about. And so I think balancing those things is maybe difficult in the short term, but it's a bet on yourself. And if you make that bet, I think that's the question you ask yourself: am I willing to make that bet on myself? John, you're on mute.
John, I think you're muted.
All right, thank you. An advanced degree, especially out of IIT, pays for itself many times over. I can't even calculate the return on investment. I was fortunate that my company paid for most of my education. But even when you look at what was spent and the benefit ultimately realized, it was time and money well spent by both parties.
Fantastic. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and our panelists for taking some time out of their day to talk to us a little bit more about graduate school. I mentioned this at the beginning, where we've been recording this webinar, so we will upload it to the Alumni website for reference. And I want to thank Ed, Arun, and John, and Nate for taking some time again. Thank you for your information, and we look forward to seeing everyone in the new year, and we'll have a new series of Hawk Talks starting in January and going throughout the year. So take care, everyone. Have a great day. Happy holidays, and thank you all for your time again.